Welcome to our few moments together on the Parsha. This Shabbos, we have the privilege of reading Parshas Vayigash, the very dramatic encounter between Yosef and his brothers, and ultimately with Binyamin, and finally with Yaakov. When Yosef meets Binyamin, the Psukim tell us that Yosef fell on Binyamin's neck and cried, and Binyamin fell on Yosef's neck and cried. And the Rashi comments that the reason Yosef fell on Binyamin's neck and cried was because of the destruction of the two Batei Mikdash, the two holy temples, the two Batei Mikdash that were destroyed in the portion of Binyamin, which is, of course, Yerushalayim. And why did Binyamin cry on Yosef's neck? Binyamin cried on Yosef's neck because of the destruction of the Mishkan in Shiloh, which was in Yosef's section of the land of Eretz Yisrael. So Yosef's crying on Binyamin's neck because of the destruction that took place in his territory, and Binyamin's crying on Yosef's neck because of the destruction that took place in his territory. The Sefer Kol Menachem, which has the teachings of the Lubavitcher Rebbe Zal in it, asks the obvious question, really. Why didn't Yosef cry over his loss, and why didn't Binyamin cry over his loss? We know that there's a big teaching involved in this, that of course the only way losses amongst Klal Yisrael can ever be made up is when one cares for the other. That's true. But the Torah's Menachem, the Menachem Mendel Schneerson Zal, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, has a little bit of a different twist on this. And he says as follows. Each person is ultimately responsible for his or her own actions and what happens in their lives. When we are acting in accordance with the dictates that we are required to, what Hashem sends is what Hashem sends. But when we have an opportunity to act on our free will and use it, then the responsibility lies within our free will. Yosef could not save the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash in Binyamin's territory because it wasn't up to him. It wasn't his free will that was necessary to have action that might have changed the course of history. And Binyamin couldn't possibly save the Mishkan in Shiloh from its destruction because that wasn't in his territory and therefore was not his responsibility. Since the two brothers could not protect each other because ultimately the responsibility was in their own territory, all they could do was sympathize, daven, pray, cry over the loss that took place in the other's territory. But when it comes to the free will decisions that led to that destruction, that's the responsibility of each and every person who was there at the time and responsible for what happens. When we fast this Tuesday on Asara B'Teves over one of the Tainesim, one of the fasts that commemorate the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, we have to think to ourselves that it would be great if we could be mournful and crying over each other's losses and help each other. But ultimately, the building of the Beis HaMikdash and the responsibility to see to it that the negative actions which led to the destruction, man's inhumanity to man, the lack of consideration of one Jew for another, the lack of acceptance and understanding of different ways of observing the Torah laws, whether one observes them as a Sephardic Jew or as an Ashkenazic Jew, whether one's a chassid or one's a misnagid, whether one's a type of yeshiva type person or one wears a kippah sruga, as long as we're all united in the ideas and ideals of observance of the limud HaTorah and of the observance of the Torah, all those things should disappear. And there should be no quarrel amongst us whatsoever. Let's take our own responsibility and try to make it and see to it that when we fast this Asara B'Teves on Tuesday, we do the best we can to make sure that this will not be repeated and that we're going to see an ultimate rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash speedily in our time. Let's take that responsibility, because that's what's going to bring about the binyan Beis Hamikdash b'mheira v'yameinu. I want to wish everyone a wonderful Shabbat Shalom, a good Shabbos, an easy but meaningful fast. Shabbat Shalom u'mevarach.